Welcome in. It's Wednesday afternoon. It's near the end of August. I hope all of you are doing really well. This is Bando's Breakdowns, episode 19 with myself, Zain Bando. And thank you again for tuning in. We have a very exciting show to bring to you guys today, except it is going to be a show of a different kind. It's still going to be the same great Bando's Breakdowns content, but it is going to be probably the most unique show in the very short history of his show. For the first time on the show, we have our first exclusive interview. That's right, the entire show is going to be taken up by an exclusive interview. And for anyone who is interested remotely in the UFC and MMA betting space, I was very, very pleased to be joined by Nick Kalikas. He is a very, very well-known sharp bettor in the space, does a lot of work for MMA Oddsbreaker, and is obviously a co-host on UFC On the Line and the Gambler's Perspective. A very, very well-known name in terms of just combat sports odds, and someone that is just very good to know in terms of a fight mind and an analytical mind. We had a wonderful conversation and talked about a variety of different topics, everything from UFC 306 to whether or not Conor McGregor will be fighting this year, as well as advice to anyone looking to do what he currently does, or anyone that's looking to get into MMA media. He was someone that was extremely helpful in that regard as well. So you guys will be able to check out that interview momentarily. Before we get into the interview, though, just wanted to run through a few quick things because this is Bando's Breakdowns. Just wanted to remind you guys to please listen to Bando's Breakdowns wherever you get your podcast. It's very much appreciated. Anywhere from Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Acast, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, please check out any feed that you want. It would be very much appreciated. You can also listen to me on YouTube Premium if you are subscribed to that feature as well. And speaking of YouTube, go to youtube.com/ETB Network. We are slowly but surely on the climb to 1,000 subscribers. So if you like, comment, and subscribe, as well as hit the notification bell, you won't miss this show or any other show on the network. It's pretty much appreciated. And for those of you who are on the YouTube home, go to the audio only home. And for those of you who are doing the opposite of it, please do the inverse as such. So very much appreciate you guys doing that. Just wanted to remind you guys too that you can also check out our extended content over at etbpodcast.com as the NFL season is slowly but surely approaching. So if you want the latest NFL news currently going on right now, you can check out our website. You can also check out the latest picks for UFC from our Puncher's Chance coach Brett Cagle, who does a great job there, as well as Grant Winsauer, who has the NFL on complete in order to walk every single week, breaking down the biggest pieces of news in the world of professional football. So if you want more extended sports content, you can go there. And then, of course, I would be remiss if I did not remind everyone that this show and every show on the network is presented by Playback. They've been a wonderful partner to us. It's literally watching live sports in real time, no copyrighted material with people that are generally like-minded. So let me get a little bit more into what it offers. So presented by Playback, watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience, from playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together, and of course, you can join our community right now by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. If you want the WNBA, if you wanted Team USA Olympics coverage, if you want NFL content in the future, there's a good chance that Playback will have it. So again, please go to playback.tv/ETB Network, because the more people that sign up for free, the more VIP subscriptions that we can give out, so more people can watch more sports content than ever before. Now, with that out of the way, without further ado, I present to everyone my exclusive sit-down with the MMA sharp-minded MMA enthusiast, Nick Kaliakas. So I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you enjoy the remainder of episode 19 of Bando's Breakdowns in this very unique special edition format. Have a good one, everyone. Happy to be joined by my next guest, Nick Kaliakas, who does a ton of different work in the MMA gambling space, specifically with the gambler's perspective, UFC on the line, and of course, MMA odds breaker. Nick, how are you today?
Great to be here, Zan. Thank you for having me on your show. Pleasure to be on with you.
Of course, thank you again for coming on, and I really appreciate it. I understand that you have a very busy schedule, so for you to be able to take time for me is really great, and I'm happy to be able to have you on today. And this should definitely be a very fun discussion. I've been looking forward to it.
Likewise, I'm looking forward to this as well. I saw some of the stuff that you sent at me, so happy to be talking about UFC 306. There's no doubt about it, and this is going to be a fun show. Looking forward to it.
For sure. So, as before we get into UFC 306, I'd like to know sort of how you got involved with UFC on the line and the gambler's perspective, because I think for the people who know you like myself, they know you really well. But for those who may not know you in your background, can you kind of break it down for me a little bit?
Sure. I actually am one of the OG odds makers for UFC betting lines, meaning that since the offshore days, I ended up around 2003. So I've been setting lines for the UFC since 2003, the end of 2003, 2004, originating a lot of the betting lines that you see and put out a lot of the popular offshore lines. Made it over to Vegas about 5 years ago and started working for Circa Sports out here in Las Vegas, one of the biggest and most respected sportsbook casinos here in Vegas as well, as an odds maker. And just recently left there about a year ago. I'm working for a betting syndicate right now. And of course, along the way, I got the opportunity to try out for UFC on the line with, of course, Yanni the Greek. And now we also have Minty Bets as part of our team as well. So about 5 years ago or so, I got the opportunity to try out. The UFC called me and, they kind of picked my brain about things. And then I got to audition. They flew me out to Las Vegas, auditioned for UFC on the line. I ended up making the cut and got the opportunity to be showcased on UFC on the line. And kind of the rest is history from there. And of course, we branched out and did the gambler's perspective recently as well. So really pleased and happy and honored to be a part of the UFC gambling team. I'm glad they're, at that point where they think it's important enough to definitely give us some coverage for the sports bettors out there that are definitely grinding each week and in and out each week with the betting lines and trying to make a living and earn, off of this, from the recreationals to the pros, I should say.
For sure. So I guess to piggyback off that, in retrospect, were you the one and that sort of pitched them the idea that we have to get involved in the gambling space to expand UFC Fight Pass? That's sort of the ones that essentially came to you and were like, oh, we will take your work and we think you would be an interesting fit for an audition. How did that play out?
Actually, that's a good question. Yanni the Greek contacted me. They approached Yanni the Greek first. He's the OG. He's the first person that the UFC got involved with as far as the gambling side of things. So Yanni the Greek actually got a hold of me one day when they were planning on launching the Greek, and he spoke with me when they were planning on launching the show. And he spoke with me about possibly coming on to be a part of the show. And they ended up launching. They went in a different direction at first. They ended up having Yanni the Greek along with a fighter. So he was either Michael Bisping, a guy like Tyron Woodley that was coming in and doing a little bit of analysis. Of course, Brendan Fitzgerald, the great commentator that he is, he's part of that show as well. So it was basically Brendan, Yanni, and like a guy like Michael Bisping kind of covering things. Now, of course, the UFC fighters, even though they know the analysis relatively well, I mean, they're amazing. Like, I love Bisping's commentary. It's off the charts. I mean, as far as his knowledge and the way he comes across. But as far as like maybe the betting aspect of things, obviously there was more capable professional bettors or in that regard, in that field. So they decided to try something different and expand it to another professional bettor coming on board. And that's when they kind of ended up reaching out a little bit along the way. And, we started the DM conversation, so to speak, and then got on the phone call, and it kind of went from there. So it was actually Yanni that opened the door a little bit in that regard. And I ended up auditioning and trying out for the UFC on the line part, and I ended up getting it.
For sure. And I guess, can you kind of talk about the evolution of UFC on the line from when you started to where it is now? Because I feel like it's one of the more popular shows on the platform that people watch just on a weekly basis. Is there anything that you can tell me in terms of just improvements or evolutions or things that you've seen with the show where you can say, okay, yeah, I really like the strides we made, and these are the improvements we're gonna make and stuff like that?
Oh man, you're coming across with some great questions, and I love it because I love talking about UFC on the line. It's like, honestly, it's my dream job. It really is from when I started back in the day, I was always knocking on that UFC door, trying to get, as far as the gambling, trying to push it. I was actually one of the first people that got, a lot of the people might not know what I'm even going to refer to right now, but a lot of the sports books out there use something called the Don Best screen. Now there's also something called Spank Odds, which is basically an odds aggregator. It goes way above and beyond that, but it's a screen and a platform that a lot of the professional sports book offshores in Vegas use to basically see and have a view of all the lines. So whether it's NFL, basketball, whatever the case may be, if it's a major sport, then you see this screen and it has all the major sports books and what their numbers are. So I was one of the first people that got UFC on the Don Best screen. And from there, a lot more betting attention came to the UFC and it started growing. And of course, that kind of coincided with The Ultimate Fighter. At the beginning of The Ultimate Fighter, when The Ultimate Fighter just took off, and with Forrest and Stephen Bonner, of course, and then the rest was history. The gambling just kind of caught on with it and slowly grew to the point where it is now. So the evolution of UFC on the Line, getting back to your original point, we started off filming. It was a taped and recorded show that we were actually doing, not where we are now in the UFC Apex. It was actually in the Performance Institute across the street from it. And we had a tiny studio that we were filming in, and it was a small little desk, and it was just us three. And it was just completely different than what we're doing now. Now, actually, we have a live product. They kind of tested the waters one time where we had no choice but to kind of go live. So we probably recorded maybe the first 5 or 6 episodes. It was a tape recorded kind of situation. We show up, we do the tape, they would edit it, whatever the case may be. And then one day they were like, you know what, we have to kind of shoot this one live. They were a little nervous because they were thinking, can these guys perform live? What happens? We're not sure what to expect with, because we're not professional. We didn't go to school for this stuff. Like a guy like Yanni and I mean, we know the gambling part of stuff, but we weren't, commentators, whatever. We didn't go to broadcast school, so to speak, whatever the case may be. So they weren't sure how we were going to perform, but we ended up actually performing relatively well for our first live show. And then they kind of got the idea that the energy and everything was such a good flow that they wanted to keep up with that. So it evolved from actually a recorded show into a live broadcast and a live show that we do. We usually film them on Thursdays now. At times, we still do record a show after that. So meaning that we might have a fight night show on Thursday that goes live, and we might record the next pay-per-view show that would maybe get launched on that Monday for Fight Pass as well. So some of them are still recorded, but overall, the majority of these are now live. So that's a big stride that I think we took. That maybe not a lot of people will realize, but it's different to do live TV. You don't get many times. Like if you make a mistake, you just got to bite your tongue, move on. There's all sorts of different pressure and nerves that kind of get involved with that as well. But I love doing it, honestly. And we've done, I think, a pretty good job overall.
Do you still get nervous at all?
Not as much. I guess it depends on the situation. I mean, there are little butterflies at times, but I think I got to the point now where, like when the cameras are on me, I'm pretty calm and I'm pretty natural. And I think that's a big part to kind of get over that hump and get to that point where you want to be, because I think you really have to be yourself and you have to bring yourself out of you. And it's not easy at times, especially without the experience, or, to be comfortable in your own skin. So I think now it's year 5, year 6, whatever the case may be, I'm finally kind of hitting that stride where I'm comfortable enough in my own skin, if that makes sense. So I don't get as nervous as I did at the beginning, though. There was definitely a lot of nerves involved.
And I assume that you intend to do UFC on the Line forever, or however long the UFC wants to, because it genuinely seems like you really like it every single week. So,
yeah, no, it's definitely one of the most popular shows that they have on the UFC Fight Pass platform. I mean, we know that time and time again. They've told us that, they're almost amazed how many people are coming into the platform and signing up for UFC Fight Pass just to get the gambler's take and the gambler's perspective, because a lot of people that are willing to bet on sports actually, or sometimes they pay for picks or other, various forms of, trying to get the information, whatever the case may be. So they are actually signing up for UFC Fight Pass, watching UFC on the Line, and watching the gambler's perspective. So I think that is a long-term goal for them. I think it's finally got to the point where they realize that they got something good here, and I'm expecting it to go, well into the future, I hope. Now, of course, there's new stuff coming around the corner, meaning that they have new TV deal that's going to come into play. I think the ESPN, you probably know a lot more about this than I do. But the UFC TV contracts and all that stuff's coming to play. So I'm not sure how.
I know as much as I'm going to be. Yeah. And so if you know nothing, I probably know nothing also. So
it's tough, yeah, because they're negotiating behind the scenes right now with everything. So who knows what to expect? But I was told, there's a chance that maybe our show gets kind of thrown into the mix with a new TV deal. So, which is good. So I think we are making some huge strides, and it's potentially that we could get this. We could see this on a major TV network and a major platform for our show to kind of be showcased there. That's how much love and respect the show is getting right now. Which again, I mean, for me saying it's my dream job, that's the ultimate. I love the way the show's going, the direction it's going. And of course, we just brought on Minty Betts not too long ago. Again, she's been a new steady part of the show, and she's doing great. I mean, everybody loves Minty. I mean, her personality, inside and outside of as far as work goes, she's an amazing person. So having us three we have a nice, unique blend with Yanni the Greek, myself, and Minty. It's kind of a good team that we're putting together. And of course, Brendan, holy cow. We all talk about John Anik, and we got to give him his crown because John Anik is one of the best commentators ever in the history of all sports. I mean, he's that good. But I'll tell you what, Brandon is underrated to the point. I love the guy. I love him hosting our show. He's fantastic. He's such a good fit too. So I just feel like we have the ultimate team, and it's really clicking. Things are coming together. So hopefully it is a long-term goal of ours to, keep this thing going.
For sure. And then whose idea is it to create the gambler's perspective, kind of going off of UFC on the line in a little bit of a different, more short form way, which I think also is a very, very entertaining show in itself. And then I obviously had the pleasure of being on, and I had a great time doing it. So
thank you. That's again another good question. It was actually Fight Pass approached with Yanni with the show idea, meaning that, hey, Yanni, we're doing a podcast. We're going to launch a podcast network on UFC Fight Pass. Would you be interested in doing a podcast on our, and being a part of it? So Yanni and I spoke about it. He said, hey, would you be interested in coming on with me and doing launching a podcast on the UFC Fight Pass channel? So I said, sure. So we kind of came up, we were brainstorming with the idea. And so often we talk about our show, even from back in the day. I have a website called MMA Oddsbreaker that I launched years ago. And I was doing some shows
week just to see your picks. Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So what we do is, even from back in the day, like we used to cover the sport from a gambler's perspective. So oftentimes Yanni and I are talking and we're like, yeah, we cover the sport from a gambler's perspective. So I was like, you know what? That's it. That's the name of the show, Gambler's Perspective. Let's name it the Gambler's Perspective Podcast. And Yanni was like, I love it. So we kind of launched the name, and then the show was just kind of a work in progress. We put it together. We decided on the format. We brought in James Lynch, which is our producer. And of course, he does a lot of the interviews for, he interviews a lot of the fighters out there. He just does such a great job across the board in the MMA media world. So we brought him aboard, and just, things have kind of fell into place. We got some sponsors that are buying into it, which is very important for us as well. And we got some people knocking on the door as we speak right now with the Gambler's Perspective podcast, because it is going really well. So I think the sky's the limit for it. But that's kind of how it originated. So UFC on the Line was doing well enough that UFC Fight Pass wanted to kind of expand a little bit and do podcasts, whatever the case may be. So they brought us aboard and helped us launch the podcast. And then, honestly, unfortunately, there's been some cuts made on the UFC podcast side of things, which there's a lot of good, talented people on there. And we were fortunate enough to make the cuts, meaning we survived, with Fight Pass kind of changing. Of course, all these media companies have to tweak things at times. And, unfortunately, there's some shows or whatever that get, cut from their lineups. And we were fortunate enough, again, to kind of maintain and actually renew a contract recently. And so there's definitely some legs left with the Gambler's Perspective as well. It's on the right track.
I mean, that's very good to hear. And I saw you guys a couple of months ago. I wasn't out there, but you guys did a live show at UFC X. Is that going to be something that you guys are going to be doing moving forward? And do you expect to potentially take the live show on the road if the card is big enough?
We have discussed that. Yes, we will be doing a show almost every year. I think it's almost a given at this point. We'll show up the UFC X, interact with the fans, possibly even have some fans on the show. As you saw there, we brought on a couple of the guests that we've had on UFC X this year were actually people that we met at the expo from years before, that they ended up just coming on our show and being a valuable kind of guest. It was awesome with the couple guys that we had. So if you guys haven't tuned into that episode, go back and watch it. It was pretty cool. But what you said about the Gambler's Perspective possibly, hitting the road a little bit, or possibly UFC on the Line, we have talked about that. So that has been put in the air a little bit. I would love to be able to do the Gambler's Perspective, maybe after weigh-ins, or UFC on the Line, maybe after weigh-ins and doing a live show, whatever the case may be, from the arena, or maybe Saturday, the morning of.
That's for sure. I'd watch it.
We would love that.
That's for sure. Absolutely. I just think it's cool, considering that, if you look at other sports like College Game Day, it's probably the biggest, one of the biggest pregame shows in the entire country. So if the UFC or if even a different MMA promotion could do something in terms of a show on the road where the fans could be involved, I think that would be awesome.
100%. Yeah. Getting to meet the fans, interacting with them, picking the brace. Like I said, maybe even sliding a fan on. Look, there's a lot of knowledgeable fans out there that understand the way the sport is. They understand fighters. They understand matchups. They understand betting lines. People are getting way more knowledgeable. So as far as the gambler's perspective goes, that's one thing that we did target. We wanted to bring the MMA community, get them involved. We wanted to bring people like you, people that are out there covering the media side of things and understand the gambling aspect of things. And maybe even from the media members to the pro bettors out there, a little bit of a cross mixture of both, or just diehard MMA fans that understand it and know it too. So we've had such a variety that we're trying to bring on, to the show itself and kind of give the spotlight to those people that deserve it. And that would be another thing that I would love to do. If you get a very knowledgeable fan that we're doing a show for maybe an arena, maybe bring him aboard and get his picks for the day. Why not? You know what I mean? I think the fans and the bettors out there and the media members, they deserve more of the spotlight because their passion for the sport itself goes so long that I feel like, we want to kind of give them back a little bit.
Thank you. It's very, very kind. And just seeing the way you guys approached me as even from, just making the formal introduction into being on the show itself, and giving me all of the nice compliments that you guys gave me. It really made me feel good. So, thank you. And I totally agree with what you said, for sure.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, well deserved. Like I said, I mean, there's so many people that don't get the spotlight that they deserve, and hopefully we can bring a little bit of shine to that. So, yeah,
for sure. 100%. And kind of transitioning over to the event side of things, we obviously have UFC 306 coming up in a couple of weeks, and it's obviously a very, very big card. It's more than likely the hottest ticket in Vegas, I would say, in the last couple of years. It's a tough ticket to get if you don't already have one. How excited are you for the card, and where are you leaning with a couple weeks out?
Wow, I tell you what, this is going to be so awesome. I'm so excited because I don't even know if I can attend. That's how crazy it is. And I'm still excited. I want to go. I'm going to try to make it to the live event, but it's kind of a soul.
You might not be able to attend it. What do you mean?
No, because I work. Here's the thing that people don't realize. I don't get to go to every UFC live event, even if it's here in Vegas, whatever the case may be, because again, with the betting syndicate, I work for one of the biggest and I think most important betting syndicates in the world right now. So on Saturdays, a lot of times I am working and I'm putting the grind in a little bit. Of course, I'm watching the fights. That's part of the, the grind, live betting, whatever the case may be. So I actually work and I'm not in the arena a lot of times on Saturdays because, you got to pay the bills. So unfortunately, if I can make it work and I can kind of get off, whatever the case may be, kind of restructure my schedule to squeeze in there for a special event like that, I will. I know from time to time, like this past weekend, our sponsor, Green Dispensary here in Las Vegas, they ended up having a watch party for us. So, if I get a chance to maybe sneak out and do something like that, I will, but it's very rare when I get a chance to attend a live event.
Yeah. Speaking of just kind of backing off that, how did the watch party go? You guys promoted it a little bit during the week. How was the turnout for it? Did people come?
It's sold out. Yes, it's sold out. It was really cool. Yeah, we had, of course, Yanni was there, Minty was there. A lot of fans were there. Of course, it was good, and it was general admission in Las Vegas, kind of a newer sports bar that hosted the party. They just did an outstanding job. The food was amazing. The drinks were amazing. The TV setup was just so cool because you didn't have basically a bad seat in the house either. So yeah, it was a very successful event. So shout out to all those guys out there as well.
Is this going to be a regular thing in Las Vegas for future events, maybe later this year or in 2025? Because the next time I come to Las Vegas, I'd love to come to one. That's for sure.
I think this could be something that we do a little bit more serious. And again, it could transition. You never know what life throws at you. For me personally, I love doing those. I love doing the watch parties. I love doing viewing parties. And there's actually talks right now. We're talking to a few companies about possibly putting together like a live watch party or a viewing party about gambling in the gambling space with some professional bettors that are betting some serious money, and getting filmed and actually having the content put out there on a platform, whether it's Fight Pass or whatever else may be. There's a few options out there. So that's one thing that I do want to eventually put together is a legit watch party where you take some of the biggest and best bettors in the world that are betting the fights, sweating the bets, with, right at my side, whatever the case may be. And we're talking about these guys can have $30,000 on a fight, $50,000 on a fight,
Right.
$100,000 on a fight, whatever the case is. So that's kind of the direction I eventually want to go to. I want to kind of focus and get something together in terms of that aspect goes. And I'm kind of working on that. So I think we will eventually see something like that. But for right now, it's kind of like hit or miss. We might just do more of those watch parties. I'm not exactly sure, but I would love to. And next time you're in Vegas, you got to hit me up. We'll definitely get together. We'll figure something out for sure.
So speaking of Las Vegas, we only have a couple weeks into UFC 306. You've obviously looked at the card. It's 10 fights, 5 prelim fights, 5 main card fights. What do you take early on as you look at the card and as some of the matchups? Because it should be a very, very exciting event. I'm looking forward to it.
It should be a very exciting event. You're absolutely right. First of all, the headliner with Sean O'Malley and Merab Dvalishvili, that is just, it's a head scratcher because both of them have been performing so well. I mean, Sean O'Malley's stand up. Look, time and time again, people kind of question him, whatever the case may be. Throughout his career, I feel like people have disrespected him, including myself. Maybe thought he was a little bit overrated, whatever the case. But he's proven it to us now that he's reached that point where he deserves to be wearing that strap. He is a worthy champion, and he is just an absolute sniper. He is one of the best strikers in the organization. There's no questions about it. So he only continues to get better. That's the scary part. We really saw Sean O'Malley right in front of our eyes improve. And then Merab on the other side of things, the guy literally is, pardon the pun, but he's a machine. He doesn't stop. He comes at you with a little bit of power now, with a little bit of fearlessness because his striking is getting better. He's putting everything together. And, of course, he's the ultimate grinder. He'll get you down and control you. He'll just make things miserable for you. So Merab opened as a betting favorite around -160, -170, but the money has come in on O'Malley. Now you're looking at closer to a pick'em type of fight as we're getting closer to fight day. So this is interesting, and it's not an easy one to bet. I think I would chase the plus money. Those people that came in on O'Malley, taking plus money, I think is probably the right way to go, at least at this stage for me. But again, it's hard to bet against Merab because the pressure, the pace, everything the guy puts at you, it's unbelievable. Let me just say this, though, real quick, too. I don't like the fact that Merab came out with the injury news, whatever the case. I know he got a cut during training.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
It's never a good look because automatically you're going to impact the betting line. Even if it's nothing too serious or like, will that have an impact on the fight? Okay, O'Malley is definitely going to target that, so he could break it back open where you're going to see a visual of Merab bleeding, and it's not going to be a good look on the scorecards, or he might even get it stopped because there's too much blood dripping into his eye. So there is definitely some impact with that, no matter what the case may be. Merab is playing it off like, okay, it's not a big deal, and it might not be. The guy is so tough that I don't think something like that's going to stop him from performing at his highest level. But the problem is automatically from the bettors out there, people are like, oh my goodness, he's hurt. What they're going to take the perceived value that, hey, this line's going to probably go that way. So you are already seeing action impact the betting window, and people are betting O'Malley because of that. They were betting him already before this, but that made it even worse with the news coming out, and it's kind of shifting things a little bit more in O'Malley's favor. So I don't like that. I wish Merab would have kept that to himself a little bit more, with all due respect. But, all that stuff kind of, even if it's true news, whatever the case, there's a lot of rumors that get floated around that impacts the betting markets for sure.
So, and I guess with that being said, do you expect to see any more crazy in movement with that fight in the weeks to come, or because the cut is already out? Do you think the lines will stay stagnant at all? What do you think?
I think we'll probably continue to see some O'Malley money coming in, but then at a certain point, we're going to see Merab money come back in as well, because there's going to be people like, okay, this has gotten to the point where it's ridiculous. O'Malley being underdog, whatever, or Merab being an underdog now, whatever the case may be, they're going to buy into his side too. So what you're going to see here, I think we will see some line movement back and forth. I wouldn't be surprised if Merab closes back as a favorite by fight day. So this is not an easy line to set for an odds maker. This is not an easy line, I think, as a bookmaker to book properly, because again, there's going to be so many big swings, I think, that are going to go back and forth with information that comes out, with sharp groups betting this, with public. Who's the public going to be on here? They're both fan favorites. Of course, O'Malley is ultra popular. He's probably one of the most popular fighters in the UFC. So you expect maybe some public money to come in there. And if it does, maybe some sharp action opens up and comes in on Merab's side. So honestly, this is kind of a head scratcher. It's such a great fight. I hope it stays together and we get to see it play out, because I want to find out. I want the answers from this matchup for sure, because the winner of this fight is going to be so deserving of that strap.
Or how do you feel about the co-main event between Alexa and Valentina. It's obviously the third time they're facing off. The second fight had a lot of controversy, and obviously Grasso pulled up the upset in fight one. How do you expect the trilogy to go? What do you think?
This personally for me has been a tough one. This trilogy has been tough because I've been on the Shevchenko side of every fight. She was winning the first fight before she got submitted. She won the second fight. In most people's minds, it was close, but she edged
My
out the second
opinion
one.
too. That's what
Right?
it's too. I had it for her too. Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I lost both of those fights, and I bet on her. So for me, I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? I should. Well, again, look. First of all, the submission win for Grasso. Hats off to her. You can't take anything away from that. I'm not, because she deserved that win. She ended up taking that back take and the technique that she had to finish that fight over. At that point, at that time, the best female fighter, in my opinion, on the planet. No disrespect to Nunes, but Shevchenko, it was just beautiful. So Grasso deserved to get that W. But the second fight, even though she was competitive, she did not. Now in the third fight, my biggest issue is Shevchenko is only getting older. Like, I understand she won the last fight. I'm a little bit more hesitant now. You're seeing about a pick-up type of price here on this fight as well. And I think that's kind of justified because we're not sure. This is going to be a competitive fight again, and the judges always come into play. And the judges, you just don't know what to expect. They're so bad with their scorecards at times. So for me, I'm a little concerned. I want to bet Shevchenko. I lean Shevchenko, and I think at the current price, she still is slightly better, and there's value on the Shevchenko side. But I'm a little gun shy, to be honest with you, because I already got burned twice in this matchup. So, and as we go, as time passes, she's not getting any younger, is what I'm saying. And Grasso's actually getting better each time we see her. So Grasso's going to continue to catch up to Shevchenko. Shevchenko's getting older. So, what's going on right now is it probably is kind of a true pick-up type of fight with a little bit of value maybe on Shevchenko. So unfortunately, the way things have played out, even at the betting market with the results, with the bad decision, whatever the case is, it just kind of made it what it is right now. And it's almost accurate where the line is.
So, and does that mean that you probably might think that the over could be in play again, considering the over was at play in the first two fights?
I think so, because I do think that they probably have enough durability. Obviously, I don't think we're going to see a submission win from Grasso here. I don't think we're going to see Shevchenko stop Grasso. Grasso's so tough that I think she can sustain and not get finished by Shevchenko. So I do think there's probably a lean towards the over more than anything else in this fight. But again, if there's going to be a finish, though, it would be on the Grasso side. I do think if she wins this fight, if there's going to be a finish on the fight, because again, she's got to the point where her punching power is a problem for most of these ladies. When she connects and hits you, they feel it. And Shevchenko's felt it as well. And her defense is slipping a little bit. So Grasso has that power, even on the feet, not just the submission game. She has enough power on the feet where I think she can do damage. So it's a little tricky, but I still feel like it should go over again. You're right.
So would you likely say that the longer the fight goes, the more it favors Valentina, and the shorter the fight goes, the more it favors Alexa then? That's probably where you...
Yes, 100%. Good way to put it. I do believe that. So I think if the fight goes to scorecards again, more times than not, Shevchenko will edge the decision. Now, again, will the judges score it that way? I don't know. But if it does fall short, it's probably because Grasso finished her again. So, I mean, I completely think that that's kind of correlated. Now, don't get me wrong. If it hits a scorecards and Grasso hangs in there and makes it a close competitive decision, I won't be shocked, of course. Or if she steals a decision that's wrong again, I won't be shocked. But yeah, I do think it's correlated. The Grasso on the under and Shevchenko on the over.
Are there any other fights that you like on this card? Just considering it's a very, very heavy card, and there may be a lot of names that a lot of people don't know, but in him the people do know is Raul Rosas Jr. What do you think of his fight?
Dude, I love the guy. Look, I bet against him when he ended up losing to Christian Rodriguez. I thought Christian Rodriguez was going to be a very difficult matchup for him with his ability to kind of stuff takedowns, grapple, his condition, all that. I was right. Christian Rodriguez performed well. It was a tough fight, don't get me wrong, but he pulled off that upset. But ever since then, I haven't bet against Rosas Jr. because you can tell, again, this kid continues to get real-time experience against some of the best fighters in the world, and he's performing just at a sick pace. Like, I understand, take that loss out of the equation. The guy has looked fantastic, and he continues to.
He's still young.
And he's still so young. You're absolutely right. And this matchup against Aricha Leg, I think it's a great matchup for him because all he needs is one back take. He's such a dominant grappler that he gets you ground, takes your back. You're probably not going to get away from him. And so I do think this is another spot where Rosas Jr. continues his role and continues to ascend towards the top and continues to improve and get better. Dangerous matchup, but I think he does get it done.
For sure. It's kind of moving away a little bit away from UFC 3, UFC 6, just kind of looking ahead to the that's the year, because at the time that we're recording is there's 14 UFC events remaining for the year. Or any announced fights or locations or any cards that are sticking out to your eye that say, hey, this might be a good card to close out the year? Because I know that the UFC is building some of these cards, and it looks like their Madison Square Garden card's going to be good. They just announced the card in Salt Lake City. Any other fights coming up for the rest of the year that you're really interested in?
Ooh, man. Again, another good question. There's so many great fights to look forward to. Look, I know a lot of people are knocking UFC 307 with Pereira taking on Roundtree Jr., but you know what? As a fan, that's going to be a great fight because you know they're going to be striking. It's going to be a striker versus striker matchup, and Roundtree has enough power to play spoiler. I don't think he does. He shouldn't, but he has enough power to play spoiler. So people knocking that fight, it's a fan-friendly fight for sure. So Pereira versus Roundtree is interesting, but I think you have to go with the Poirier versus Holloway. Holloway looks so good. Coming up, I understand, went up to lightweight, whatever the case may be. A lot of us, including myself, thought Gaethje might be a little bit too much for him, but he performed well. Now dropping back down to featherweight for his old strap to try to get that, dethrone what is now the king in Topuria. I mean, Topuria's power. Let's see if he's the first one to stop Holloway. So for me, I think that's the most interesting fight because Topuria has a legit shot to possibly finish a guy like Holloway that's just been pretty much a zombie at this point. He's been phenomenal. So that is a fight I'm looking forward to. Just so many good fights ahead.
For sure, and I have to get your thoughts on it since you're here. If John Jones fights Stipe Miocic, how do you think that early betting line potentially looks? Because there's a lot of criticism around that fight, and B, there's a lot of rumblings that both guys might retire afterwards. So what do you think? What do you think about that?
I think both guys will retire. It's just my guess. I don't know anything factual. And, this is just my opinion personally. I think both gentlemen will retire after that fight. I don't think we're going to see Stipe fight again. I don't think we're going to see Jones fight again. Of course, everybody's right Stipe off. I think that's kind of a mistake. I understand Jones looked good against Gane, and he demolished him. He destroyed him with a lot of sharp money, by the way, at the betting window coming in on Gane, fading John Jones. But that being said, Jones went out there and did exactly what he was supposed to do. Stipe matches up a little bit differently. I don't think he's going to get submitted that fast. If anybody can do it, it's a guy like Jones. But I think Stipe, again, he's been training for this fight. He knows it's his last hurrah. A win over John Jones is a lot of motivation for him. So I think we're going to see Stipe come in here and perform better than what the expectations are. A lot of people automatically are saying, are we going to get to see Jones fight Aspinall? Are we going to get to see Jones fight Aspinall? What about Stipe? What if he wins it? Right? They're not saying that. So everybody's writing Stipe off. He is the best heavyweight of all time. I would never write that guy off. He's such just an all-time great champion. You can never write him off. But that all being said, we're not going to see Stipe fight after the Jones fight, win or lose, I think. We're not going to see Jones fight after the Stipe fight either, win or lose. He's going to retire. And you know what? I'm not even knocking Jones. I don't think he wants Tom Aspinall. I don't think he wants that heat right now. But no disrespect, why should he want that heat? The guy's accomplished everything there is to accomplish. You don't have to fight. If you're John Jones, you don't need to test yourself. You've proven that you're one of the best fighters in the history of the sport. You go up and you defend the heavyweight title. You can ride off into the sunset. Much respect to you. I will not knock you. But I think that's what's going to happen. He will not fight Aspinall because I think he's content with stopping after the Stipe fight.
And who think, just in your own personal opinion, that Jones Miocic actually happens this time, right? Compared to last year? You think it'll happen?
I do, because I think both of these guys are holding on to this is the last fight I want. So I think that if anything, if they really want to fight, that they're going to make it happen. You know what I mean? And I think both of them really want this fight and nothing else right now. So yes, I do think it probably happens. And it'll be a huge fight for the UFC if it does. So I hope so.
For sure. And before we move on to the conclusion of our conversation, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, do you think that Conor McGregor fights in the UFC again, yes or no?
Yes. I don't know when, but I do think he's going to fight. Again, it's just there's way too much money to be made. He's under UFC contract, and I know he's got probably, with the bare knuckle stuff going on, whatever his vision is for the future, I don't know, but I know he's not going to be able to fight unless he gets out of that UFC contract. And how many fights does he have left? I'm not exactly sure. He's got two. Okay. So I think he's going to have to probably finish those fights. So the Chandler fight, I think he's kind of content. He's off and on, whatever the case may be. It's unfortunate that it didn't happen this year. I know he wants it in December, but Dana White already basically said it's not happening this year. So I don't know. I do think it happens though. Don't count it out. I think we will see Conor McGregor again, probably early next year or maybe mid next year. I'm not sure exactly the time frame, but I do think we will see Conor McGregor fight again for sure.
Well, having having it come from somebody like yourself makes me feel reassured that I actually still believe in my heart that he still fights too. So let's hope it happens. Before we get out of here, I just had a couple of rapid fire questions for you, probably
Sure.
about 3 or 4. So the first question that I have is, what is the biggest UFC bet that you have ever won? And could you tell me particularly what fight it was, and potentially if you remember what event it was?
Oh my goodness. That's a good question because there's been some big ones. I can't, you know what? I won't name dates or specific amounts, but it's definitely a six-figure bet. So a six-figure bet. And again, you have to understand, a lot of us in the professional betting world, we have betting partnerships. So it wasn't my complete bet, but we had basically like a house, that you could pay for a house on a certain fight, whatever the case may be. This is probably a few years ago, but those were kind of at one point, again, when I was working with a different group, whatever the case may be, that's the kind of limits that we were betting. We were hitting the market in Europe, in Vegas, offshore, just everywhere across the board. We were getting down money. So it ended up being well over six figures, and we ended up winning the bet, by the way. So that was probably in the back of my mind, one of the biggest bets. Again, I can't go into too much details, but that would be it. Now, that's not a normal bet. Don't get me wrong. We're not betting, but there are people out there that do bet that. I see it week to week with, again, the group I work with, the connections that I have. I see a lot of these guys that are taking and firing $100,000 bets on UFC. Not a lot of sports will take that kind of action, but there is ways to get down for sure.
Do you remember the first UFC bet you ever placed?
The first UFC bet I ever placed. I do not. So sorry to disappoint you for that. The first UFC place,
No, it's
it
all
was in
right.
Costa Rica, and it was probably a $25 bet. I just can't remember what card it was or who. It was early in my UFC, obviously, odds making career. And again, at that time, my betting, like we're talking about me betting potentially over, six figures, whatever the case may be, with a group with partnership. When I first started, I was only betting $25 to kind of get the feel of this. So it was a small bet. Yep.
And this is kind of sticking with the first thing here, or the first theme here. What was the first UFC fight you ever remember watching, and what was your initial reaction to it? How long have you been watching it? I'm curious.
UFC 1 from the very beginning, baby. So yeah,
Wow.
with the Gracie family coming in, I do. I mean, that kind of opened all of our eyes, and especially back then, because for me, I have a Taekwondo background, I have a martial arts background, a karate background. So for me as a kid, when I used to come home from a weekend at like a karate tournament, whatever the case may be, or I would come home, get in front of the TV, and we used to turn on like CBS Sports or what, I forget the channel, local channels. So we used to watch some kickboxing. So like I used to watch Rick the Jet Rufus. There was a lot of like legends, kickboxing, whatever. I used to turn on and watch these guys fighting because you wanted to kind of be that, you know what I mean? You wanted to get there at one point. So with the UFC coming to place right away, it was a combat sport. It was, real fighting, whatever the case may be. And I was a Taekwondo guy. I did not think a grappler could ever come and beat any striker. So I was one of those guys that striker
Right.
will light up all these grapplers. And then Hoist Gracie opened all of her eyes like, oh, what did this guy just do? That's when, obviously like the world started realizing how good jiu-jitsu could be and the impact it would have in MMA and everything. So yeah, I was around honestly since day one. I wasn't setting odds since day one, but I was around since day one.
For sure. And piggybacking off that, the final rapid fire question that I have for you is: if you weren't primarily a UFC or MMA bettor, what sport would you specialize in, and why?
That's a good question as well. I would say probably basketball. For what I've seen in the last couple of years with the sports books, with the injury information, with how the lines are flying. I mean, I think basketball is a sport that bettors can actually kind of pick apart. And there's so many middle opportunities, meaning with these totals, you're seeing totals move 5 or 6 points off the time. So you have a nice window to kind of sneak in there and get a middle number and win both sides of a bet. So I would probably say NBA, but NFL would be a close second.
For sure. And my final overall concluding question before we wrap this up, and again, and Nick, thank you so much for your time. If you have any parting advice to anyone that wants to do what you do currently right now, where would you tell them to start, and what would be the best resource that they could take with them out of anything that we discussed today?
Wow, good question again. Well, it's I think definitely start paying attention to shows like this that you're getting knowledge. You can definitely, but there's so many good people out there that are dropping knowledge in the social media world, on YouTube, on different various websites that are covering the sport. So you pick maybe a handful of journalists, handful of sports bettors that are putting out content. And I think you start listening, kind of paying attention to what they have to say. But more importantly, you got to trust yourself. You got to put the work in for yourself, than more importantly than anything else or anybody else. So start handicapping the fights. Maybe go to a Typology type of site or a Sharedog type of site. Look at the basic information, the UFC stats site, the MMA oddsbreaker sites, whatever your case may be. Start gathering information, break down each fight, get some information in front of you, then start diving into film a little bit and start kind of watching the fight and see how it plays out and see how the guys match up. So your handicapping journey, honestly, should start at the very basics with film study and just kind of getting what data is available from the internet. Basically right now we have a big tool. When I was around early stages of my odds making career, there wasn't a lot of footage out there that we could find online. Now it's changed significantly. Things have gotten so much better and information is so much more widely available. So there's enough information for you out there to definitely be able to kind of start your handicapping career. But again, stay with smaller bets. You have to kind of feel and learn and experience. Like bankroll management is extremely important. That's another topic that I would kind of learn and dig up a little bit, and how exactly you should manage your bankroll when you are applying it to sports betting. I think that's very important and underrated at times as well. But I just think that you depend on yourself, you do the work, and you try to kind of come up with your own number and see how far off it is. So if you're looking at a fight that's maybe minus 300, but your line comes out and you're like, oh, this is going to be a closer fight than that indicates, I don't think it should be minus 300. I think it should be like minus 150. Then there's value, obviously, on the underdog. You take that dog. So that's just, I think, a quick way of kind of starting your handicapping career, if that makes sense.
Well, Nick, this was a tremendous conversation. I really enjoyed getting a chance to talk to you today. And as I alluded to earlier in the interview, I know that you're very busy, so to be able to make time for me, I'm very, very grateful for. I guess I'm going to give you the floor for the final question. Where can people find you on social media? Is there anything else you want to plug as the fall fight schedule gets underway? Anything you want to say? The floor is yours.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being on here with you, Zain. I really do appreciate it. You're awesome. Keep on doing the good stuff that you're doing. There's people like you, again, are underrated in this industry and deserve a spotlight. So thank you for having me on and you sharing your spotlight here. And as far as myself goes, you can find me at Twitter, at Fight Odds, actually, on Twitter or X. It's at Fight Odds is my handle. On Instagram, you can find me at Fight Odds Nick Kalikas, _Nick Kalikas, I believe, on social media. So you can find me there. And then go check out MMAoddsbreaker.com. That's a website that we're kind of getting back into the mix a little bit. We're going to slowly start adding more content, better stuff to MMAoddsbreaker.com as well. So check that side out too.
Well, Nick, thank you very much for your time. This was an awesome interview, and I look forward to staying in touch. And good luck with your UFC 306 leans in a couple of weeks, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ed. You too. Enjoy the fights.
You too. Absolutely. Very, very appreciative of Nick Kalikas for coming on today's show. Really, really much enjoyed our discussion and everything that we talked about regarding the UFC and MMA betting world. So we thank him again for his time. Wanted to quickly wrap up the show here. Thank you again for tuning into another edition of Bando's Breakdowns. This has been episode 19. Just a final reminder to please be sure to like and subscribe to the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. You can do so by going to youtube.com/ETB Network. As I alluded to at the beginning of the show, we are slowly but surely approaching 1,000 subscribers. So it's very much appreciated. If you are watching this episode on the video-only platforms, please go over to the audio side as well. You can check out the podcast wherever you get them, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Acast, Google Podcasts, so much more, whatever podcast platform it is. Those breakdowns, it's almost 100% on there. So please go and check out and those breakdowns for every your podcast. Just a quick reminder as to where you can find my work as well. I'm a sports journalist and ETB Network co-host. I do stuff for this show, which is my main solo show every single Wednesday that you guys see on the network. You guys can also catch me on the MMA Outsiders, which is on Tuesday nights at 7 Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. You can also catch my written work at several places, including most notably the Sporting News, Sports Illustrated, BJPen.com, and more on the way. So if you want to check out all of my work, including the stuff I do on the podcast side, you can go and check out my written work as well. With that being said, thank you again for tuning in to another edition of Bando's Breakdowns. This has been a very fun show. And again, I greatly am appreciative of Nick Kalikas for his time. I was lucky enough to be a guest on the Gambler's Perspective, and he was outstanding. And just to see the kind heart that this guy has for people in MMA media like myself, and seeing all of us strive for success, we continue to work our way up. Much respect to Nick there, and I look forward to a lot more conversations with him and several other notable guests in the future, which I admire. So again, that's been another edition of Bando's Breakdowns, episode 19, presented by Playback, courtesy of the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. Have a wonderful rest of your week and enjoy the first official week of the college football season, because it's almost here and it's going to be very, very exciting. Have a good one.